Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Beyond the Headlines. Welcome to all our viewers, new and returning viewers. I'm looking at the chat and seeing so many familiar faces. I'm so happy you guys joined us today. And thanks to the team for being here, for keeping the chat pleasant, and for Shayna Caldwell, who's on the Shills account. So today, we have a guest that you all probably recognize, Dave Nonnemacher, and we introduced him as part of the Ray of Life project, and he's here to give some updates today about new projects. And if you see in our chat, we have a charity link for a new project that he's on for Tourniquets for Ukraine. We'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. And the guest that you haven't met is Pastor Lee Scheumann. Hi, Pastor Lee. And he's an amazing guy. These two are friends, and that's why we have them on together, because their stories, go way back. They complement each other. They work together, even though they have their own separate things. And it's an amazing story. If you haven't shared the stream out, someone you can share it with, please do. Please hit that like button. It helps us. And of course, after the stream, comment. I encourage super chats because they do help us bring more hearts and minds to the channel and help for Ukraine. I need to actually read out a couple of these that we already got. Ladybird, welcome to Shills Apprentice. I think these were from yesterday, but I'll read them out again. Reb Tyree, welcome to Shill Grandmaster. Claudia David, Shill Apprentice. LWD Farm, thank you for being here. And thanks for gifting One Shill's membership. And Yvonne Way, our super sticker queen. I can't do like Dick does with the hearts and all that, but she is our super sticker queen, and she's got clapping hands for $5. Thanks so much, Yvonne. So I'm going to turn this over to, I'm going to have Dave say hello, and then have Pastor Lee say hello, and then we'll get into how they met. And go ahead and use the donation link. We are going to get, Dave's going to tell us about that project, but, go ahead and start donating because they really need the help. So, Dave, over to you to say hello to everybody.
Greetings to all from Two Harbors, Minnesota, on the shores of beautiful Lake Superior.
Pastor Lee?
Yes, and greetings from Isanti, Minnesota, the marvelous metroplex of which Minneapolis and St. Paul are suburbs. No, we're about 40 miles north of the Minneapolis downtown area, a small rural community of about 6,000 people.
Cool. My brother actually lived in Arden Hills for a good number. He lived on Lake Johanna. Beautiful property. Minnesota is a beautiful state. Are you guys getting any cold weather there? Or
It was in the high 40s this morning.
32 north of Two Harbors Friday.
Wow, I'm in the 50s, and we had 90s last week, so it's refreshing, but it's like, no, not yet. So Dave, can you go ahead and give us an update on any projects that you have going, your organization, Ray of Life, the Tourniquet project, and then we'll go over to Pastor Lee.
Sure. The Ray of Life project continues. There's a boat in the water right now, thanks to Pastor Lee. The shipping container is headed to the community of Buzivka, Ukraine, which is west of Uman, and a lot of medical gear. And then there's I can't remember exactly, maybe 95 lights that are part of this shipment. And interestingly, the shipment is going to go to Buzivka, but through my son's family, who lives in Northwest Iowa, I got to know a displaced family from Poltava. And this family participated actually in a light build in Iowa, down in Orange City, Iowa. They've since relocated to the Philadelphia area, but Alina reached out to me a couple months ago and said, "Hey, Dave, is there any way we could get some lights to Poltava?" There's two churches in that community. And I think one's in Poltava and another in a neighboring community that would like to have some lights. And I asked Pastor Lee, could we include some medical gear? So there's two pallets of equipment, of medical equipment, desperately needed medical equipment, and then lights and water filters, the VF100 water filters, headed to Poltava. And I reached out to Alina Tuesday afternoon, and her family was safe, her friends were not. And she interestingly said the two things most needed in Poltava right now are blood and tourniquets. And I'll talk about the tourniquet project in a little bit here, but we all wish that shipment was in Buzivka. We wish that Vladislav, who was going to pick it up, was on his van headed to get all that stuff. Unfortunately, it's going to be weeks before it gets in their hands. But the Ray of Life project continues. I just had a Zoom this morning with a church community from Eau Claire, Wisconsin. There's a shipment that will go out on Tuesday, and Pastor Lee will talk about that. But when those lights hit Ukraine, we'll have over 600 units in the country, and I'll be building 60 next week in Wilmer, Minnesota. And there's already a build on the schedule for October for up 20 for sure, but they're in the fundraising process right now. So lots of lights have headed to Ukraine, but I remember what a friend told me. He said, and because I'm his contact, he said it this way, so understand it in context, because it's not my idea. But he said, Dave, your idea works. Many more Ukrainians need these. Can you send 1 million? So I don't know that we're going to get to 1 million because it's grassroots, hands-on assembly process. But we're going to keep doing what we can do, and I keep talking to people, and word of mouth is great advertisement for getting people engaged in this Ray of Life assembly process. And we're waiting on a large shipment of components. Some of it's in, some of it's not, but we'll be ready to ramp up to do 250 more when we have the components come in. So that's an update on that.
Dave, one quick. I see a couple of they're regular viewers, but they're new names from my stream. Could you just tell everybody what the light box is really quick, so that, and also it'll help people get familiar with that project. It's an amazing little device. It's just wow.
This one's considered pre-assembled. It comes from West Virginia, put together by kids that have aged out of the foster care system. And these are young people who no one has ever asked anything of them. No one has ever had expectations for them. And when they see pictures of me or a Ukrainian, thanks to the shipping component that Pastor Lee brings, being able to hand deliver one of these units to a Ukrainian, it's a powerful statement to those youth that have aged out of foster care in West Virginia. That's the backstory. But here's the light. It's not assembled. Here's the 3 LED strips. We now have put a little flashlight on the battery, so the battery can detach. Somebody can walk around like this in the light. And then the 3 LED strips get attached to this shiny 3M paper from 3M, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. And then, when they're attached, they get plugged in, and you'll have three strands of light. And, if you've been in the basements near the front, or you've been in any basement in Ukraine, or an apartment building without light because it's blacked out, or because they don't have access to electricity at all, these are very useful. We also have a cell phone charger, and the solar panel. This is the solar panel that charges the battery for 6 to 8 hours. It'll run the lights for 21 hours. This will also charge a cell phone if they just click, or if they just hook up directly to the solar panel. So we ask people to donate. to cover the cost of the components and a little bit of the shipping stuff within the country, within the U.S., $125. And again, we're approaching 600 units in Ukraine.
That's perfect. And 600 units, but you need 1 million. And because of our community and the people that are in Ukraine now, one of them, Greg Terry, he has his own channel, but he's also a huge friend of our channel, was on our channel yesterday. He gives updates, and the Ukraine channels that support Ukraine are giving updates about Poltava. And yeah, it's a tough situation there. But, thank goodness for guys like you who are, making a difference there. So we'll come back. Do you want to go through the tourniquets now?
It's up to you.
Let's go to Pastor Lee. And Pastor Lee, if you could tell our audience how long you've been involved in helping Ukraine, your background, and your whole spiel.
Okay. Well, I'll start and say I started getting involved in Ukraine in 1997, where I had an invitation from Greater Europe Mission to go to a new Bible school they were starting in Zaporizhzhia. And they were looking for individuals to come and teach modular classes. And we could kind of choose. I mean, they were very desperate. So basically, if I raised the funds, I raised $2,000 to help come support the school. I could pick whatever class I wanted to teach, come and teach. And I did that. I taught 3 classes. Then that transitioned from the teaching to some of my students wanted help starting a church. So I got involved in church planting in Melitopol, which is south and east of Zaporizhzhia, and then church construction. And then I was kind of running out of things to do, in which some friends of mine who had an initiative of collecting fire protection equipment, sending it to various places. They were working in Moldova and Peru, and they wanted to work in Ukraine. And with that, they would do chaplaincy training for chaplains for the first responder community. And after that, there was another ministry called Hand in Hand Together that approached me about sending clothing. And then, so we got into the humanitarian aid. And then in 2009, when there was 2009, I think it was, we had the Orange Revolution. We started sending food, linked up with another organization called Life Rice, and then after that, linked up with another organization called Matter 360. And so I was helping to send 3-4 containers a year, something like that, and it was a nice leisurely pace. And then when the war started, I was just in the midst of trying to put together a container of medical supply to send to Melitopol. And obviously, Melitopol was invaded, surrendered, second day of the war. All my contacts were cut off. That was a non-starter. And so then, looking to just send 1 container of medical supply, I didn't think it was going to go beyond that. But in my conversation with Matter 360, who is the organization that supplies our medical supply, they offered the sending of a free container with two provisions. One is that they needed to have volunteers to sort the medical supply so things would get there in an orderly fashion. And the second thing was that they needed to have it palletized. And at that time, I just finished, less than a year before that, had finished construction of a pole building, which was large and was largely empty. So I had the facility. I was serving a church at the time before I retired. We had 5 nurses, had the nurses, and within about 2 weeks after I got that call, we had medical supplies in, and we were starting to sort and organize and do that. And that's been 2 years ago. I think in June was our first container, and on Tuesday we will send our 26th container to Ukraine.
Wow. Just wow. So where along that process did you actually form your charity, Hand in Hand Logistics?
I formed that in as I was starting to ramp things up, I think our documents have it in May of 22. I really hadn't intended to do that. I was working with this other organization, of which I'm now the president of that as well, about I needed to buy a truck. Well, the other board members did not want to get into that, and I didn't want the personal liability of owning a truck. And I thought, long term, I need to be able to streamline streamline the decision-making process, and to make sure that things could move along. So forming a separate organization, of which I obviously I still have great relationships with all the other organizations I work with, but it was just a way of optimizing the efficiency of what we were doing.
I think too, when people see, that organizations are registered and legitimate, it actually lends a little bit of it's not just credibility, but it's like, oh, okay, we can look at their paperwork, we know that they're legit and all that. Because I know with Ukraine stuff now, there's a lot of well-meaning people and they are doing the right thing, but there's so many people asking for donations and doing different things. So, props to you guys for that. I want to acknowledge we had Pastor Lee's, I think, a little new to YouTube. So our viewers can actually buy memberships to our channel, and it's gifted memberships. And Blonde Bombsheller, who's an amazing person, she's actually going to be going over to Ukraine helping before the end of the year for sure. She gifted 5 memberships. So thank you so much for that. Also, everybody, if you have questions, please tag at the Shills, and Shayna can direct those to me in the production room, and we'll be more than happy to answer your questions as we go along. Any questions for Pastor Lee or for Dave, just say question for them, and because they are not in the chat, but if you tag the Shills, Shayna will get them to me, Shayna or Dick will. So we can we encourage questions too, because these guys have a wealth of information and so interesting. So I was so excited for this to happen today. You have no idea. So let's backtrack a little bit about how you guys actually met. Can you one tell the story?
Can I jump on that?
Sure.
I was in Zaporizhzhia and was serving with the Mariupol Chaplains Battalion, and we had just done a delivery to a village very close to the front, and I knew I had about, at that point, I think I had about 110 of these lights in my basement, and had run into brick walls. People would pat me on the head and push me out the door when I talked about shipping them. And so I sat down with one of the main leadership with the chaplain battalion, and I just asked via a FaceTime back to Kyiv to translate. So I asked, do you ever have things shipped from the States? And he said, yes. And I said, well, how do you do that? And he said, you need to talk to Anatoly. So I said, okay. So I got Anatoly's phone number, and I got back to the States. He was in Seattle. I got back to the States, and I called Anatoly and had a nice conversation with him. But basically the bottom line was, you need to talk to Rachel. So from Seattle, I called Rachel in Auburn, Washington, and had a wonderful conversation with her as she navigated around her active children. And then at the end of that conversation, it basically was, you need to talk to Sheila. And I said, okay, well, where's Sheila? And she said, somewhere in Minnesota. And I said, okay, well, I'm in Minnesota. So then I called Sheila, and Sheila said, you need to talk to Pastor Lee. And I said, where's Pastor Lee? And she said, he's in Isanti, which was less than 2 hours from my front door. So I called Pastor Lee, and this guy, if there was ever a guy who needed a truck, and if that's where the genesis of Hand in Hand comes from, if there was ever a guy that needed a truck, it's this guy. So I called Pastor Lee, left a message. He returned my phone call, and he was on the road somewhere coming from, I don't know, you were in North Dakota, but I think you were coming from Canada or something like that with a delivery of whatever. So we arranged to meet at Toby's restaurant in Hinckley, Minnesota, and we sat down at the table, and we both found out that we had a number of things in common. And that's how we got to know each other. And since then, with very few exceptions, besides 2 other people that I've sent lights to ship to various regions, different regions in Ukraine, every Ray of Life kit has been shipped over there by hand in hand. And for that, I'm eternally grateful.
That's a common thread, I think, that in the communities that help Ukraine, sometimes you just astounded at the generosity of people and what people accomplish against the odds. I think doing it, Pastor Lee, would you say that, practice makes perfect, doing over and over and over again, you learn the ins and outs of getting all this stuff done. So it's hopefully the next thing is, that you do is less difficult as far as logistics.
Well, I'd rather say that practice just makes better, because I'm learning all the time how to do it better, how to smooth the operation out, how to trim costs, how to increase efficiencies, those kinds of things. But yeah, it was very delightful. I was actually in Pembina, in North Dakota, which is like 30 miles from Canada. There was a large donation of fire protection gear. And so it was a long day trip going there and coming back, stopping at another fire station. And so it worked out really well. And it was a delight to meet Dave. It was a delight to find out that we went to the same school in Indiana, Taylor University. And it's been the genesis of a great friendship since that time.
That's wonderful. I know I've made some of the best friends of my life, working on the channel and meeting people that help Ukraine. We had a question from a viewer about, what's the most requested aid items, and he talks about generators. But I guess what they're asking is, how are you guys told, who are your contacts telling you, well, this is what we need? I think with the Ray of Life project, that's kind of a given, and that's an ongoing thing. But as far as the tourniquets, Dave, maybe if you could go into how you did go into how you needed those, but are there, and Pastor Lee, I want to get specifically into the fire equipment part of this, because that's the part that people have never heard, that our viewers have never heard on this channel. But who are Dave did tell us about who the contacts are, and Alina got contacts. How else do you get the information of the greatest need that people, ask you guys for?
Well, I think for me, it was just asking the question when I was in Ukraine and with the chaplains battalion, what do you need? And I heard, not 10 times, maybe not even 5 times, but heard numerous times tourniquets. And that was also a conversation that Pastor Lee and I had, that the military grade, I can't remember if they're Cat 1 or Cat 2, Lee, maybe you remember, but they're expensive. And it's an item that it's really, really hard to call somebody who makes those and say, can you donate 500 of those for use in Ukraine, because they can sell them and somebody's going to buy them. So just kind of that kicking around in the back of my head, because of conversations that I had actually with Ukrainians who do spend a lot of time on the front lines, and chaplains that are connected to the Mariupol group, and just people that I met along the way, and then having that confirmed by the same, Pastor Lee saying, and maybe from different kinds of sources, but hearing the same thing. So hearing directly from a friend who was from Poltava, that's a little different. She knew that we were doing this project. She actually translated the directions for how to use this particular. It's a NATO tourniquet. It's not a Cat 1. So it's a military grade tourniquet, and she translated, how to use it into Ukrainian. So we're going to, put that in the hands of everybody who gets one as well.
That's great. In fact, I was talking to someone last night about the difference in the tourniquets, and basically that there are those really expensive tourniquets. But this is, if you could, I remember you saying or reading who donated the parts. If you want to give a shout out to the people that helped you get those tourniquets done, please do right now.
Yeah, so a friend of mine owns Cedaero Bikepacking company. I mean, it's a Spoken Gear Cyclery, Cedar Coffee, Cedaero Bikepacking bags here in Two Harbors. He and another friend who owns a corporation called KnightVision, they used to own Granite Gear, which is one of the foremost outdoor, backpacks and canoe packs, et cetera, et cetera. So I was standing in the shop one day looking at a bike bag, and it's like, ding. And I just asked him, I said, would you ever feel comfortable sewing a tourniquet, or do you know how to? And he goes, come here. And he brings up this picture. They actually used to make them for the military. So it's different than the Cat ones, but it's a military grade tourniquet. So Cedaero Bikepacking bags and KnightVision development. They source the materials, and their staff are volunteering their time to sew. We're sewing 200 on Wednesday night this week. We'll be sewing 200, and depending on how much money we raise, it's kind of like the solar lights. As long as we can keep coming in, and this stuff is all on the credit card. So hopefully we can make that up. I mean, we all do that. So it's like it's a need. We're doing it. And 200 Wednesday at 4:30 Central Daylight Time. We're going to start cranking out these tourniquets, and we'll get all 200 done on Wednesday night, and then they're going to go directly to Pastor Lee, and those will be shipped in the not the one on Tuesday, but the next shipment, which is also going to Zaporizhzhia and the Mariupol chaplains, and then they will distribute them as they see fit, and those guys go where people don't go. So they're certifiable heroes.
That's awesome. I do want to acknowledge one of our viewers, UTV and Ham Ken. He said, Wisconsin support, doing what I can for $10. Thank you, Ken. He's a longtime viewer and huge support in the community. I do want to thank everybody, because even before the stream started, Dave commented to me that donations were already coming in for these tourniquets. So, Dave, if you want to give a shout and thank everybody for that. He's like, Is our link up? Is it? And I said, yep. And that's how amazing our community is, that they see a link, they know it's legitimate. They're like, all right, let's help these people out. So,
and you actually mentioned one of the names. I'm not going to try and remember who it was, but one of the names that I did see come in before while we were working with our technical challenges. So yeah, $6 saves a life. What more needs to be said? So thank you. We're doing it regardless if $100 comes in or $1,000 comes in. We're going to build them, as we're just going to keep doing it. So thank you.
And thank you for thanking our viewers. I just love our viewers, our whole community. So Pastor Lee, let's get into the fire equipment, because it was on my thumbnail and all the artwork and the firemen, and there's a photo. Actually, I should actually probably try to find that photo of you standing with the firemen in Ukraine. But can you tell us the story about how the fire equipment started, and how you source it and get it over there, and any training that you need to do?
Yeah, this has been actually the genesis of what I did in terms of humanitarian aid was the fire protection equipment to Melitopol. And what we found, this is obviously 15 years ago, that the protection which they had at the time was really inferior to what we have in the United States, because there was no thermal insulation and no ability to protect one from the heat. It was just basically a welding jacket that people would have, or a raincoat, and very ineffective for those kinds of things. When we started sending it to Melitopol, we got really positive feedback on that, and so on a limited basis, I would I would procure uniforms from local fire departments, things like that. It's really a small amount that was there. And but then partnering with another ministry called Japan Ministry International, we were able to send, I think it was in 2019 or 2020, small container of about 250 sets. And then at that time, the regional commander wanted to have 2,000 sets to outfit all of his firefighters. Well, the war happened, that was interrupted. And so the whole enterprise was, this chain was interrupted. But at the same time, in the spring of 22, there was a fire chief in Orinoco, Minnesota, who took upon himself to start collecting fire gear. And all of a sudden, and actually it was the first thing I used my truck for, there were over 500 sets of the turnout gear, which is there. And so then that was actually, I cleaned everything out last spring, and now I've got another 250 sets that need to be sent out soon. The gear comes from local fire departments, and in the United States, OSHA requires all fire departments every 10 years to purchase new equipment head to toe for all of their firefighters. This is an expensive investment. It costs an average of $4,500 to outfit one firefighter. In the rural fire departments, which are really where the treasures are found, many times I get, what I get is either gently stained, or frankly, there are many times it's almost like new. I was in the fire department last spring in, I think I was in Grand Marais, and they were saying they were getting new gear this fall for me to come back. He showed me the old gear, then he showed me the new gear, and frankly, I couldn't tell the difference. But the fact is, because it was 10 years old, there's a certification which says you have to get rid of this. And you have to get rid of this in one of two ways. Either it has to go to a landfill, or it has to go out of country. That it is not legal for them to sell it to a smaller, less affluent type of company. So that's how we got into that. Now there's a couple of places on the North Shore, in Lützen and in and Hibbing, I think Grand Marais again, that want to send me some things. A lot of it now it's kind of word of mouth. I haven't had a chance to actively do this, but it changed a lot actually this year, in that I was in contact and conversation for several years with a fire chief from Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. And I was saying, I'm really concerned because I send this gear. I don't think they have confidence in using, especially the breathing apparatus that we're sending. Would you be interested in going and doing some instruction? Well, again, the war happened, COVID happened, everything's hit on pause. We reconnected in January, and he was highly interested. Then there was another friend of his who had just retired from Brooklyn Park, who had been fire chief in two other departments in earlier years. They were very interested in going. And at the same time, there was a fresh contact that developed in Ukraine through a Ukrainian who was here in the United States, Dima Netterbenko. And what happened with that was, all of a sudden, he's aware that we have the equipment. They want the equipment. We sent them everything. The poor man was overwhelmed with it, but I think we got it distributed now. And then in June, we did a follow-up because, again, we wanted to just ascertain what is the need, which is there. And not only the need for the uniforms, but what's the need throughout the department, from uniforms all the way up to trucks and all the equipment in between. So we visited in June, I think we visited 8 or 10 fire departments. They held an instructional time for about 75 firefighters. That culminated in a memorandum of understanding or cooperation that was signed with the chief fire official of the entire region or oblast, which they've got about 2,000 firefighters. And so they want us to come back on a regular basis to do training. And as we are able to procure quality equipment to send it. Now, when they came back, again, it's all this networking which happens. They were in conversation with some other fire chiefs, and the fire chief from Dayton, Minnesota, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, said, "Oh, I've got this tanker truck. I'll go to the city council, see if we can give it to you." Well, it's now sitting on my property, waiting to be sent. And so then the plan will be that this truck, which came to us, pretty much everything was taken off of it. It had been decommissioned. Everything's still in working order. We'll resupply it with hoses, nozzles, everything that is there to make sure that when it goes, it's fully operational. And we're going to replace a couple of the two front tires because they're worn. And then to do value adding to that, we'll send the truck, and then we're going to say, please don't use it till we get some people there to help train you on this, because the American trucks are far more powerful than the older Russian trucks that the Ukrainians have. Everything that almost the only exception was one city department which was guarding a chemical plant. The trucks they had were 40 and 50 years old. They're Russian made. They can't get any parts for them. They're very weak. They're very inefficient. And ours, in turn, are very powerful compared to what they have. And we want to make sure that they know how to use them, but also that nobody gets hurt in using them.
So I actually gave Dick, our producer here, a link to bring up a photo with you in Ukraine. There it is. Can you tell us about this photo, Pastor Lee?
Yeah, to the man on the far right with the short red hair, that's Sean Conway. The man kneeling in front, that's Mark Lind. These are the two fire chiefs that went with me. The other men which are there were part of the local fire department. The lady there, Christina, is our interpreter, and the man next to her is our coordinator on site, and by name of Ruslan. And so this is one of the fire departments that we visited. This is one of the rural volunteer fire departments. They actually, the uniforms there, they were blessed by the Polish government. These are actually new uniforms that were given by the Polish government. So things that we sent were sent elsewhere to places that didn't have anything. And just to say this too, that some of these rural fire departments have no uniforms. The firefighters have no uniforms. They go in their street clothes to fight a fire. And they can't go inside the building because they don't have the equipment to do it, but they have no protection at all. And so what is sent, and we make sure that what we send is good quality, make sure it's clean, so that it's very usable for them.
Somehow, I think you have impeccable standards. I just get that both you and Dave are cut from the same cloth of that with the work that you do, and you go above and beyond. I'd like to just break away here. We have a super chat. Joe Medley, who's in part of our Ukraine support community, donated $50. Thank you so much, Joe Medley, for that support. Thank you. Let's see where to go. So is there more to the fire? Where do you see the firefighting donations going in the future? As far as, are you tapped out in the United States with those people? You said you had a few more you're going to visit that you could get some, but I don't see the need ending over there, but are you constantly hearing about, oh yeah, we have equipment, or how are you hearing? So it's just word of mouth?
It's primarily word of mouth. I haven't had a chance to have someone intentionally go about talking, because again, fire departments in Minnesota, and I think generally most places in the United States, are pretty independent. They're pretty much on their own, and there's associations of fire departments, but there's not a type of top-down structure which does that. So a lot of it has to go with word of mouth. This is very much, I think, embryonic in terms of the potential which is there. The most effective endorsements that I receive on behalf of what I do really comes through individuals like Sean and Mark, who are themselves firefighters. It's a community. It's like any community. someone speaking from the outside really doesn't get heard. Someone speaking from the inside has the immediate respect, which is there. And so I periodically have, I have people contact me. They just kind of heard about it. But what we'd like to do in terms of hand in hand, and we kind of tongue in cheek when we went, said, well, let's, how do we brand ourselves? And somebody said, oh, hand in hand, fire protection division, which I thought was a little pretentious at the time. And I thought, well, sure, why not? I mean, there's nothing to lose with this, and it sounds good. Now, Mark and Sean want to take over the procurement of that because I don't have time. And what they can do is they know where to go to get the word out that things are needed. Because again, if you have all of the departments in the state, and again, we've gotten things from Wisconsin, and we'll take things gladly from Iowa, that want to be donated. But you have, fire departments. This is a national mandate that everything has to be rolled over every 10 years. And I'm not too sure how many firefighters are in the state of Minnesota. I think there's over 120 different departments. Every 10 years, that means at least 10 out of the 120 or 12 out of 120 on the average. And if they average, 15 to 20, well, that's 200 uniforms, which is potentially available. And I know that other places ship things to Latin America, but I have no problem if I walk into a fire department simply saying, okay, anything else you want to get rid of? Because I know that whatever they want to get rid of is operational, it's good quality, it's going to be efficient, and there's a mechanism of shipping both the fire trucks as well as ambulances that we can get them to Ukraine and they can be put into service right away.
That's amazing. And the point about the 10 years too is that I think the U.S. is very much, and I know this isn't, fire equipment is you try to gather it up and repurpose it and send it to Ukraine, but I think in general the United States is kind of a throwaway culture, and I think it's getting to be that way in other countries because people just want whatever new is coming out, and if nobody wants the other stuff. So we had a really good comment here that I just want, it's not a question, it's a comment from Rob, and he said modern fire appliances are beasts compared to the basically post-war gear. Good plan to train the crews up before they pointed at anything. So I love that comment. Thanks, Rob. Very good point. Do you, and I don't want to blindside you here, but those guys that you said are doing this work for you, I'm sorry, what are their names?
Sean Conway and Mark Lind.
Sean and Mark, I would love to ask you if you could maybe work on them so they could come on the stream someday with me and tell us, because it's honestly from the time this started with Martha Holsoff, who brought the refugees into Iowa. Then that's how I met Alina. Then that's how I met Dave. That's how I met you. And it is this perpetual, like, I love that word perpetual because the universe just keeps opening doors. I love that. Something's really meant to be when the universe opens these doors and you're like, yahoo. So, Dave, you're awfully quiet there, but thank you. So
don't lose the fact that the man has a fire truck sitting at his house that's going to be headed to Ukraine.
Really?
There are some people in this life who are 25 feet tall, and we're looking at one of them.
No, actually, I'm just a little over 6 feet. I used to be taller, but I'm getting older.
You're way big. You play way above that, Pastor Lee. So yeah, I think I've talked with the guys up the shore in Grand Marais and also in Hibbing and Maple Hill as well. And yeah, I think it's kind of like he who does not ask does not get. And I've asked for a couple fire trucks, haven't hit on one yet, but some of the pictures, not all of them, but some of the pictures that came out of Poltava, you can just see how desperately needed, people who are engaged in the rescue operations and going places where they don't have the proper equipment. Some of those pictures, most recently, you can see how important this is. And this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I find it interesting that, Poltava obviously got significant press, and then the next day Lviv got hit and people died, and there was nothing. I mean, you had to dig far and wide to find anything about that. And it's little things that we hope just add up to bigger things. And I'm grateful to your listeners for tuning in to hear from us, from just two guys who are trying to make sure their socks match when they go outside in the morning. and the efforts that we believe God has called us to be involved in as we keep our ear to the ground and keep our hearts open to what might be next. And
well, on that point about the information, and again, I sound like a broken record saying how amazing our community is, but because everybody is so engaged with support, they have their eyes on YouTube. They have their eyes on Telegram. They have their eyes on X, Twitter, Zitter. And I have news sources that literally are updating by the minute. And it's not just, I do have an air raid map, but that's just the red map. It's going to come up. But this one news source actually gives a timestamp, and sometimes I'll just click in there and I'll see it. And again, if you want to pass our links along, and I can give you guys links afterwards for people to join our streams and listen. They can join. I don't know if you guys know what Discord is. Discord is basically it's a social platform, but it's specific to the group. Like our channel, the Shills has one, Greg Terry has one, Greg Terry Experience, and a lot of people, you can actually see who's in each group. It common, like I can click on somebody in the chat and I'll see that they're in 5 other Ukraine support channel groups. So that's why, and I'm our listeners are, I always say, share and get the word out about our channels, because we do reach more hearts and minds that way, and more hearts and minds are more support. And they're, bottom line, it's goods or money that helps Ukraine. And the government deals with the weapons stuff, but, and unfortunately that is a big part of it. But news-wise, we have people so tapped in, and I just love it. Sometimes it's overload information, but that's why even for you guys, if you share us out, they can join these communities and they will see it, because we don't rely on, CNN and all those other places to keep us up to date. And I do see when the Israel-Gaza war started, that really went ahead of everything in the news and kind of buried Ukraine. But again, with our community, we are aware of it, but we're not. We focus on Ukraine, which is amazing. That we stay focused. So none of us are getting younger with our memory. So our producer, Mr. Dawson, gave us an update. 247 USD raised so far during the stream, and thank you. And Dave, I'm not sure if you see. Oh, I think that's what he is talking about, the tourniquets. I don't have that site up, but it's possibly he's talking about that. If you guys don't mind, for our viewers, Pastor Lee has a Facebook page, and he does have some photos on there. I think some of them are around a year old, but there's some very cool and interesting things in there. Since I previously had been in Russia way before the war, of course, there's some common things that I think talking about those photos and then describing them could be really interesting to our viewers. So, okay, if we go into that.
Sure.
We'll see if Dick can pull up that Facebook part. And again, everybody, feel free to ask questions. Shayna will put them so that I can see them. And any great comments that you have for Pastor Lee and Dave are also welcome. So let's see. Let me actually pull those up really quick here. And we're not going to go through every single one of them, but there's a few there. So when he gets this up, Pastor Lee, you have the container in there, and there's a picture of your pole building too. That's a huge building, and there's some of your volunteers in there. I love to see volunteer photos because all volunteers are just regular people, just getting together and doing a common thing. Okay, so there's a picture. Pastor Lee, can you see that?
Yeah, I'm seeing it there.
Okay, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that's one of our more recent containers that we sent out. 40-foot container, 10 feet high, 8 feet wide, holds about 30,000 pounds of medical equipment, food, clothing, whatever we're throwing on it at the moment. And we kind of jokingly say we don't like to ship air, so we try to jam every inch of space available because again, it's a flat rate on the container, as full or as empty as we're sending it. So we try to make it as efficiently as we can. It actually costs me about 40 cents a pound to get something to location in Ukraine. If you compare that with, what is it, 65 cents for a 1 ounce postage stamp, it's very efficient and very cost effective.
So what kind of, a lot of our listeners, because they are involved in donating things, like Greg Terry, for one, he collects stuff and gets it over there. Can you tell us a little bit about the documentation process and why it's so important to have the inventory and all your paperwork and everything, and what the consequences would be if you don't have it right?
Well, actually, the documentation has relaxed greatly since the onset of the war. We give a rough count in terms of how many boxes of each kind of things which are there. It's to be candid, it's never accurate because we're always looking for one more box to throw on. And we've been doing it this way now for 2 years, and we've not gotten no negative repercussion. The documentation weight really falls upon the distribution of goods in Ukraine. We send only to organizations who are registered to receive and disperse humanitarian aid in Ukraine. They in turn have to document everything that they give out. So they need to be able to say and I don't know how granular that is, but they have to be able to report to the government, this is what was dispersed. So on our part, it has gotten a lot easier. On their part, it is still a challenge.
Understood. And when Dave was on previous too, he was telling me, or telling us a few of his experiences with the Ray of Light boxes too. I think at one point, I'd want to go to, let's see, Dick, there's a photo. It would be the second row down, 1, 2, 3, the one at the end, the sixth one across. It's the picture of a concrete floor. Let's see if he can get that up for us. And I'll tell you what, I wanted to know about the Dick, it's the second row down and the sixth across. It's basically the picture of a concrete floor, and it has like little rods going through it on the floor. Go 2 over from that one. 2 over to the right. It's like, looks like a floor that's half done. So while he's getting that one up, there we go.
Yeah.
Pastor Lee, is this in Ukraine?
Yeah, this is Ukraine. This is in the first floor of the Kyiv Theological Seminary. And at one time, this had been a cafeteria. But in order for the school to remain open, they had to renovate one room, reinforce it with steel pillars, and make it a bomb shelter where the students could go at the time of an air raid. So this is the room which was they had to reconstruct. They spent over $100,000 rehabbing that. They fixed it up. Actually, now it's gorgeous. They made it not only to withstand the bombs, but also to double up as a classroom, so that it has functional utility, in perpetual, because of how it's been built up and finished off.
I spent an hour in that room on the first daytime attack on Kyiv. It was back in March. It had been like a year and a half, I think, since there had been a daytime attack in Kyiv, and we ended up having to go down into that room and spent a good hour there. And you're right, Lee, it's a beautiful room. I'd rather be there as a classroom participant and not during when bombs are hitting Center City, Kyiv. But
so here's the thing for our viewers that I found interesting about that floor is those coils that are going through, that's for heated flooring, right?
Yeah.
So, in the United States, if you're in the, Minnesota or Wisconsin, heated floors are considered a luxury. When you're over in Eastern Europe, heated floors are just normal, and they have huge boilers and the water just keeps going through them. And I think in the United States here, people are used to PVC pipes breaking and disasters and horrible stories. So it's like, oh, why would you want to permanently bury a PVC pipe? What if it breaks? I have seen these floors being put together, and the special little welder things that they do to melt the plastic, they don't use that blue glue like we do that gives away in 6 months and then there's a leak. And they do these floors, and these floors last, and they are so warm. I remember just like you could walk, bare feet on linoleum in the United States in a cold area. It's like, oh God, where's my slippers? Where's my slippers? Here you're just like, oh, and the warmth just radiate. And I don't know if you notice this too, but there seems to be a thing about warm feet in Eastern European cultures. Warm feet are part of health. And for me, it's like, yeah, health or not, it feels great. And for folks, that's what this picture shows. And I can drop the link later because even if you're not on Facebook, I'm pretty sure that these might be available to the public. But really interesting there that, yep. And I've seen this done, and they weld it together. It's spaced out right, and you just pour concrete over it. And once you got that boiler going and push that water through, it's like, it's so great. So Dick, if you want to find the picture of it is of some of the destruction. It's the picture where the cars it looks like a car blew up and landed on the other one, and they're all sort of rusted out looking. If you can put that one up there. That one struck me in particular because of, the power of an explosion and what can happen. If you want to say a little bit about, I see that these were taken I think these were taken with your cell phone.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, Dick, it's top row. It's a photo. It's cars that obviously were exploded, fire. It's just rubble. If you want, it's got a lot of rusted out looking things. If you want to pull that one up. For me, it's top row 6 photo over. Dick has a little bit of different display. Next one.
That too. This is in. These are pictures here. Are in Irpin, which is a suburb of Kyiv, This is the place where the Russian army in the early months of the war had advanced to. They advanced quite quickly there, and at that point they were stopped. And so these are pictures that I took, I think, just in June, and they're put it this way, it's not the entire community which is destroyed, but you do have a lot of buildings. And what's interesting about it, perhaps sobering, is that these are just random buildings. They're apartment buildings, they're grocery stores, they're they're not buildings of any strategic importance. And that was one of the things that was so hard for the Ukrainians, because the carnage was pretty random. And there's one picture in there, if you can find it, of a church which is all shot up, and outside of that particular church there's a memorial in which I think there are 200 people who are mass grave buried there, who were basically randomly shot during that part of the war.
Was that in Bucha?
That was in Bucha and Irpin, yes. Yep.
Yeah, and that's deemed, crimes against humanity and war crimes now, and hopefully someday there'll be some retribution for that. Let's see, Dick. There's another photo. It's a photo with it looks like a house, and then it has a wrought iron gate in front of it. It's right next to the picture with the tank. I want the picture with the gate. Yes, that one. So for anybody who's been over to Ukraine, will know this, but in Eastern Europe, it's very common for people to have this iron grid gate is kind of unusual, because normally it's panels, solid panels. Everybody has their home like that in your front yard. And I don't know where that comes from, but in the United States, we're all bragging about our nice green front lawns, or if it's in Arizona, we have a nice rock lawn. But for the viewers, when you see something like this is pretty normal. And when you see things, Dick, there's another picture of a, it's the house where the gate looks like all shattered. If you want to pull that one up. Can you tell us a little bit about why these photos were important for you to take, Pastor Lee?
Well, I think it was just a random accounting of the destruction, which was there in a residential community. And just sobering to see what was done. It was a very brutal environment, but also it speaks well of the fact that the Ukrainian army and their national defense, and even civilians which were mobilized, was able to repel what was really seen as being one of the most powerful armies on the planet. And that's as far as they got. Obviously, the intent was, in the early days of the war, was to occupy the city, to arrest or to force or to execute the president, to basically decapitate the government, instill their own puppet government there. And but that's just how soberingly close it got. It would be like some of this carnage happening in, say, Alexandria, Virginia, on the way to the White House. That was kind of the import of it, less than 10 miles from the seat of government in Ukraine.
And what impacted me looking at these photos too was that some structures obviously have been bombed, but other structures are obviously just abandoned. People had to get out of there, even if their house wasn't hit, and they're somewhere else now. And that house where they maybe where they grew up, they raised their kids, generations have had that house, and it's just there, sitting there. And, hopefully that when this is all done, the amazing people that are, going to be there for the reconstruction, which I know is a big part of our community too. They're, people are like, yep. Have you guys heard about the Crimea beach party yet?
No.
Well, when you're part of our community, it started a long time ago, actually, because, Crimea was illegally annexed, obviously, in 2014, and the little green men marched in, and it's like, what? And, the rest is history. And everyone's a big rooting for Ukraine to take Crimea back. And because it is a vacation destination with beautiful beaches, the one thing that everyone says that they're going to do is organize a big beach party in Crimea, ship a lot of beer and a lot of food, and the families that from the United States and Ukraine, everyone's just going to go there and celebrate. Kind of a little thing of hope that we have. I think that's good for those photos. I want to look through here and see if we have any questions. We have a great comment from somebody. Informer says, massive thank you all at the Shills, which is our channel, for all your efforts. You're all heroes. Thank you. That's such a great, these guys are the heroes. So let me go back to my notes here and go back down here. So with 2:31, we've got a little bit of time left. Are you guys okay for time? Sure. About 20 minutes or so left here. I think we kind of touched on that Ukraine's going to continue to need things as things evolve. And right now it's, the medical supplies and sustaining, the help for the medics and all that. Let me see here. This is something that the audio for you viewers, forgive me on doing this, but it's an important part of these guys' life. And I want each of you individually to comment on how faith has kept you going on all of this. When there's the recent attack in Poltava and then the Lviv, and it just keeps getting ramped up and ramped up. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works for you guys?
Go ahead, Dave.
I was going to defer to my elder.
I can go first. So it's a little story about, after our streams, we have comments. People can go in and comment, and some people, one of the ones that struck me was that Greg Terry, who, again, I told you who he is, he's on the ground there, and he's got people at the front lines. He delivers aid to the front line. He sees it, and he tells it how it is. Not all the news is great, and there is a ton of horrible news that comes out. And I had said to them, better you hear it from someone in our community that you trust than some random person out there. And what keeps me going on this and not just getting sucked down to the abyss of the bad news is people like you guys that are, despite everything, you're doing such amazing work. And every day maybe somebody will have a guest on a YouTube show. They're writing a book. Rick, the Ukrainian, one of his guests wrote an amazing book with photographs about things that happened in Bucha, just to bring out awareness. But in all of that, the darkness that comes out of there, I just say, you know what? You just got to have some faith, and you got to know and hope that everything's going to be okay. Because without that, what do you have? Plus a little prayer and meditation, just lifts the spirits for me. So there, now your turn.
You first, Dave.
Yeah, I think, I blame it on my mom, quite frankly. You're created a certain way, and I think the way I was knit together was just to, come into a realization that there are things that matter, and I've typically been able to live my life that way. And specific to Ukraine, I believe that my faith is at the base. And, you know, oftentimes the great commandment, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. So the pragmatic aspect of that is where I put a lot of energy, I believe, over time. And I don't pretend to have skin in the game. I don't pretend to be something that I'm not, but the reality of my DNA is that my grandparents came over on the boat from Ukraine. And I was raised by a mom who was of that union. And I was raised, I mean, when I hit Moldova, even more so than Romania, when I hit Moldova, it's like the food, the people, the way they looked, the dress, the babushkas, how they, to my grandmother. I mean, being in a room in Kilianoa, right on the river, I felt like I was, in a home. And then up in Chernivtsi, I felt like I was around my cousins. So, you lay in bed at night and you have things cross your brain and you have things cross your heart. And the stuff that was crossing my heart and my brain about Ukraine since February 24 was very consistent. And I'm just grateful that I was able to participate in the way that I have been, and that ain't going to stop. So however this goes, I'll be over there for most of the month of November, doing various things, and I have a incredible family support for that, and I know Annette, I know that brings concern to you, and I, you don't want to do things foolishly, but as I'm able to, I will continue to serve, because I believe it's what we're called to do.
Absolutely. And and I have, one of my best friends is over there volunteering, and she's going to be about as close as it gets to the front line here soon. So yeah, we do worry, but in a million years, I would not tell someone don't follow your heart just because somebody else is concerned for your welfare. Absolutely. You have to follow your heart, and you have to do what you really feel like you need to do. I think it's great. I don't think I heard from you before that you had your grandparents were from there. Do you still have relatives there that you keep in contact with, or?
My uncle was the gatekeeper, and they're large family. So my mom was one of the younger ones, and he was the gatekeeper, and he came down with Alzheimer's and then eventually passed away. So before any of that stuff, it's kind of, other than bits and pieces, it's all lost. But he did tell me that we still had family in Ukraine, but I never. He was in California. I was raising kids in Iowa, and life just got in the way of having long, extensive conversations, and I regret that.
Well, there's always hope. There's 23andMe, and
yeah, I know. But like I said, it was hard enough to fire up the computer to join this thing. So,
No, I hear you. So, Pastor Lee, how do you keep your strength up with all this stuff going on?
Well, one is my emotional connection runs, really quite deep. Having gone for 27 years, I ended up over the years actually traveling to a lot of countries, making a lot of connections, building a lot of friendships, and so some of the few of the pastors that I know, three of the pastors. One is, I sponsored him now. He lives in Cambridge, a nearby town. Another one has been displaced in Western Ukraine. A third is still in Melitopol, and he is not permitted to leave because his vocation is that of a veterinarian. Even though the church is closed there, he can't leave. The Russian army won't let him. They want his services, and he is forced, to be there. But I know that they've got a loose connection in terms of the remnant of the church there. It's not dead, it's just underground. But I think, also in terms of family connections, I have a Ukrainian daughter-in-law. And so having grandchildren, which are half Ukrainian. That's drawn my interest there. But I think God calls us to do good when we can. I think in a sense, you talk about faith influences. What came to my mind as I was reflecting upon that was when Cornelius shares the gospel with, when Peter shares the gospel with Cornelius in Acts chapter 10. And he says, and you heard about Jesus of Nazareth, how he went about doing good and healing all of those afflicted by the devil. And realizing that, God calls us into his kingdom, and our life is to live it out now. And I think when, he calls us to do good to people who are in need, and then when we have the resources, to do that, to me, there's no question, you just got to do it. When I got that phone call asking if there was some warehouse space available, to sort medical supply, and I'm thinking of this newly constructed 40 by 80 foot pole building that at that point was housing my cars, and it was 3/4 empty. I thought, okay, I know what needs to be done, and the good thing was that I hadn't done any of the exterior cement work, and so I could design that to accommodate the semis, and I had resources at the time to spend on it, and to me it was a no-brainer. I was grateful my wife was willing to go along with my wild ideas at the time, and but I think it's just what God calls us to do, and if the resources are there, I think we're obligated to do it. So.
I agree. We had a great, and I apologize when you guys see me looking other places. I'm still listening. I've got several screens up because I'm getting messages and things like that. So please don't think I'm ignoring you, but I hear everything. I've got my earpieces in. That's just part of streaming. We don't have like a CBS production crew that holds up big signs going, whatever. Christina S., she said, at the Shills, thank you for having such amazing guests. How can we connect with them? I'm part of a group working on a nationwide campaign to unite communities of faith to pray for Ukraine. I'll just, how do you guys interpret that? And I mean, they have Pastor Lee has a Facebook page, but just taking that on face value, how can we connect with them? I'm part of a group working on a nationwide campaign to unite communities of faith to pray for Ukraine.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. My email goes to a personal account. It's leescheumann@gmail.com. And I'm happy to give out my cell phone, 763-350-4816. Somebody wants to call, happy to talk.
I'll put your email up there. You're bold. Usually we protect our information.
Well, I trust your audience. Don't worry about it.
Yes, and there's buttons that can turn things off too, and you also have voice screening. Oh, Dick said I couldn't move fast enough to mute him for a sec, but that's okay. He's let's see.
I think that for me, just hearing that and knowing that's a hope and a desire is really encouraging. And I believe for me, with specific to the Light Project, going into churches and going into faith communities and having them show the interest and the desire to participate has really been an encouragement for me. So to know that that's out there, I don't have any answers on how we can unite the faith community. I think, there's a lot of things that the faith community needs to be united on for sure. But just knowing that that's a desire and knowing that people are thinking that way, I mean, I would covet the fact that people would be praying for for the stuff that we're doing, the efforts that we're trying to do to bring light and to get good fire gear and to save lives with tourniquets and provide, surgical kits that can be utilized. I mean, the last stuff that went to Zaporizhzhia, I got so many pictures back from the Mariupol guys that distributed it at hospitals and stabilization units, and how important that is. So that gets passed on down, and to know that your listener has that desire, just whoever she's connected to, just keep doing it, and specifically pray for that the fire truck gets over to Ukraine, that fire gear gets over, that medical supplies and solar lights and tourniquets, because that matters, and it matters to the guys who are unloading the stuff at the warehouse in Zaporizhzhia at the home base of the Mariupol Chaplains Battalion. That's really important, really, really important. So thank you. What did you say her name was? The listener?
Chris, let's see. I think it was Christina.
Christina, thank you. And yeah, feel free to share my email too, Annette. That's good.
I will. There's an update here that Mr. Dawson said we are at $422 collected for the tourniquets.
Yeah,
so
awesome. So divide that by 6, a little less than 6, a couple cents less than 6, and that's how many tourniquets have been purchased in this time. So that's amazing.
We do. We have, I sound like a broken record, but we do have such an awesome community. Keeps me coming back and doing this. This is what I can do. And Dave, you know a little bit more of my history, but I ended up in Iowa because my mom broke her leg 2 weeks into the pandemic. I was between California and Nevada, picked everything up and moved here. And that it has not been easy. And she did pass away in March. She had a long, great life. She had Alzheimer's too. It just seems to be a thing. And but again, we're taking on paths that had I not been, chose to uproot myself and, be in tornado land, I wouldn't have met all you wonderful people and the wonderful community that we have. So there's everything, there's good and bad with everything, but I think there's more good. So, and the great thing about our community is they're in my computer. So I can take my stuff up and move back to the West Coast. So, so we have a few minutes left, and I'm going to give each of you some time here, closing thoughts and, the most important things that you would like our viewers to take away from today. So, Lee, Dave, I'm going to give you, and we're going to follow up with Pastor Lee, then I will do my thank yous.
Well, I mean, specific to the immediate, we want to build these tourniquets, and a friend in Ukraine said tourniquets save lives. So that's a quote. And for the immediate, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing with the lights and the tourniquets. We've got the mental health, the trauma-informed training. We haven't even, Lee and I are involved in that as well. We haven't talked about that as well. So there are a lot of things moving forward that we're involved in. And for everybody who's listening, it's an encouragement to me that you're listening, but also be encouraged that we're doing what we're doing. All of us are doing what we're doing. We're doing what we can.
Absolutely. It would be great to actually, if Dr. Wittern would come back on, if both of you guys want to talk about that, that's, again, different combinations. So Pastor Lee, on to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think one should never underestimate the power of what one person does in obedience to what God calls them to do. I mean, if you just read the stories of the Bible, you have this unnamed servant girl who says, "Oh, I know a prophet in Israel, Captain Naaman, who can help you get cured of leprosy." And because of that, you have him going to Israel. He becomes cleansed of leprosy, and he comes back to his location is a believer. I mean, one should never deprecate the response of anyone, because the New Testament, the Bible itself, is full of, humanly speaking, pretty non-consequential people who respond like fishermen who say, yes, okay, Jesus, I'll follow you. And they turn the world upside down within a couple of generations. I think the prayers obviously are important. You have, as you were talking, there's that scene in the book of Revelation where all heaven is silent while the prayers of the saints are elevated to the throne and heard. My goodness, it's the most important thing we can do. Not the least, it's the most, which is there. But I think that God always uses ordinary people. I remember early in ministry, there's a book by Francis Schaeffer entitled "No Little People, No Little Places." That Jesus came to a cave to be born, and he was executed as a criminal. And it's like the Gospels always make sense in an upside down world, which is there, and all of us make a difference. I was going to say that I think it was a week or so ago, I got a call from a lady I'd not met. It was through a mutual acquaintance from Duluth. Her name is Jackie, and she wants to send some things down, and then she offered to collect things in Duluth and work with Dave and all that kind of thing. And she said, well, I just know I'm really small potatoes compared to you. And I rejoined it really quickly, and I said, look, and I'm a really small potato compared to the Global Empowerment Network, World Vision, or Samaritan's Purse. But being small potatoes is really consequential because, frankly, a truckload of potatoes is made up of small potatoes. And the fact is that truckload of small potatoes feeds a lot of people. So, and it's all because there's that one little potato that's on that truck. And everybody who is listening here can make a difference. The small donations, the large donations, the volunteer work, the collecting of things, it all makes an impact. That collectively working together, God multiplies it all.
Thank you for that. I'm just actually quickly responding to somebody here in the chat. I want to go ahead and give my thanks. Dave knows a little bit because I've talked about our team. We have an amazing channel where in the background, there's people supporting. They're in the chat. They're keeping the chat friendly. So that people can make comments and share their thoughts and encourage donations. And one lady who she has a family. She's pretty much the sole winner in her family. And she fills my shoes every stream when she's in the official account, interacting with the chat. And that's Shayna Caldwell. Amazing person. And I want to thank her. Liam Wakefield. Liam is always welcome, or he always has some funny comments and keeps everybody's mood up there, as well as keeping the chat safe. And I want to thank you, Liam. Crazy Cat, well, Crazy Cat, love you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support. We have a young man who actually is the son of somebody who has a history with the channel. And he is actually autistic, and he's I think above a teenager now, but we call him Super Chat Matt. And he literally, when somebody donates, he goes ahead and he just repeats it. He has one of these really long usernames with all these flurries on it. So Super Chat Matt, thank you for all your work too. And last but Chris Lundy. Chris Lundy is new to our team, and Chris helps keep the chat safe. He helps drop links during our huge Ukraine show on Saturdays, and just all around backup. So thank you so much, for your help too. We thank you, all the viewers who tuned in today for all your donations. The last number I had was 422. We might even have more as time goes on here. So huge thank you for that. We have a team member who is actually out sick right now. His name is PJ, and he's in the hospital in the UK. And, lots of well wishes to you. Get well soon. We really need you here, buddy. So take care of yourself, and we hope to have you back on the team full time soon. Everybody send out your well wishes for PJ. He really needs it. To Dick Dawson, my mentor, our engineer, producer, video guy, Facebook picture guy, thank you. And thank you to Dunk, who is the other channel owner. He's usually with family on the weekdays, on Saturdays and Sundays. But these guys have been amazing in helping me be who I am and get, win the hearts and minds and have the interactions with the guests. These guys are amazing. So, hit that thumbs up, everybody. Share, because we need to get to 10,000 subs so we can get lots of hearts and minds over here so they can listen to our great guests. Subscribe if you're new to us and if you love the stream. And everybody, please leave a comment on all of our streams, but help this stream out, because I'm new and I don't do a show every Sunday, but comments actually will boost me up so that our guests do reach more people. Everybody, Lee and Dave, the YouTube has these algorithms and they kind of feed people stuff based on what they search for and everything. And since I'm a newer show and not on all the time, comments and likes and everything really help us so that the message can reach more people. So viewers, thank you for that ahead of time, and you'll see me hearting you in the comments. That's me that does that. So let's wave goodbye and thank everybody, and I'll see you guys soon.
Donations for the tourniquets. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody.